pleasure to be your host for the day. BW Sustainability World is pleased to welcome you all to BW World Environment Day Conference 2022, where we will deliberate on the state of global climate change scenario and where the world stands in its fight against climate emergency today. Today, you will witness leading climate change experts and clean tech entrepreneurs charting out the right action plan against climate emergency. BW Businessworld is led by Dr. Anurag Batra, Chairman and Editor-in-Chief of BW Businessworld and founder of Exchange for Media Group. It is the fastest growing business media house in India, with a network spanning across 17 niche business communities and 8 magazines. BW Businessworld is proud to be entrenched in various verticals in the domestic as well as global business ecosystem. With changing times, BW now has a massive leadership in the digital space as well. BW in its portfolio has 17 niche B2B communities that organize conferences and forums to facilitate interaction between sectoral business leaders and create conducive environment for collaboration. Before we start, I would like to request the BW team to play the BW Legacy video, audiovisual, to give us a glimpse of the journey of BW Businessworld.
BW Businessworld presents a rich legacy of curated events that enable conversations on policy issues in India.
Because of the state of our cities, we have no option but to build smart and resilient cities.
Digital India is more for the poor, underprivileged and the deprived.
Covering a range of topics, BW Businessworld events look to create a strong narrative around smart cities, digital India, healthcare, Swachh Bharat, human resource issues, education, banking and finance, among others.
The world is fast changing. Best practices are available now on the net.
विकास डेवलपमेंट पूरी राजनीति में ये फोकस बन गया है.
BW Businessworld events provide a speaking platform to the voices that matter.
स्मार्ट से ताल्लुक ये है कि हम जो बेसिक एमिनिटीज हैं उसको हम चुस्त दुरुस्त करें.
You don't have to be a technologist. You need to understand how technology influences the world.
Mahatma Gandhi was a great man. He was the leader of the freedom struggle.
We believe that e-governance and IoT will play a very, very important role.
BW Businessworld is an excellent exhibition platform that helps you showcase your services to the right audience.
BW Businessworld's digital transformation went on the fast track in 2020, marrying its legacy of credibility and robust business journalism to a technology-first world. Hosting over 250 virtual summits and webinars across its 17 niche business communities, with millions engaging with the power-packed content like BW Dialogue Series, Festival of Life web series, and custom-created webinars and hosting 20 plus virtual summits. $33 million page views on an average, 21 special issues in 2020 hit the stands, and multiple IPs scheduled in the coming months, BW has taken a leadership position in the business news segment. To become a part of our legacy, write to us at partner@businessworld.in.
Thank you, BW team, for sharing that video with us. Today's digital podcast is being streamed across all BW Businessworld platforms, including our social media channels and also on www.bwbusinessworld.in. As we flag off today's event, I would encourage everyone to join in the conversation and share their learnings from the day by using the hashtag BW Against Climate Change. Now, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let me request for our Chairman and Editor-in-Chief, Dr. Anurag Batra's visionary opening address on the need of the hour, fight against climate change.
Thank you, Vasudha, for being here on a sunny June afternoon or morning. Good morning to all the viewers that have been on the broadcast. And let me say to you that, we celebrate the World Environment Day every year, but I think our actions need to happen every day to make the world a better place, to make it more sustainable. As a media company, it is our endeavor to be able to bring people, practices to the fore that build a better future for our planet. And I can say at BW Businessworld, in the last 2 months itself, we brought out 2 cover issues. One focusing on how ESG is becoming more and more important for businesses. Second, 2 years back, we started ranking India's most sustainable companies, India's largest companies on sustainability practices and what are they doing to be able to build a more sustainable world. So we at BW Businessworld are committed to making sure we bring you the best of people and practices that impact our environment, and how do we, whether it's a recycling award or India's most sustainable company, we as a business media platform are staying at the forefront of bringing these best practices to you. Today, sustainability is an imperative that really needs to be embraced in a wholehearted, deep way. Sustainability, right from individual practices in each one's home to our businesses. We do our events. Is the practices are our events sustainable? Do the materials used are sustainable? Are we doing recycling? Again, we are a print product. We do print the magazine. How can we use more recycled paper to be able to still get the same product? So I think each one of us has to ask that question: what are we doing to make the world more sustainable? As a media product, I've already told you that we've done a cover on ESG economy. We've done India's most sustainable companies for the second year. We're also doing the Recycling Award Summit. So in our own small way, we're making sure that our community of business owners is sensitized more to making the world a more sustainable place. Today, on the World Environment Day, we have a lineup of leaders for making an impact in the business space and bringing sustainability to the forefront of businesses. Today, sustainability is not just a strategy, it needs to be deep fabric for organization. And I'm not talking in sectors like cement or manufacturing, but I'm talking in every sector. The future belongs to us. I hope we make it a future that we are happy to live in. Global warming is a reality. We need to wake up to it. It's not a hoax. The temperatures in the world are 2-3 months ahead of its time. Today in December, in some parts of last year, in December 2021, in some parts of Africa, it was at least the same temperature that they'd get in March, 4 months ahead. So clearly, we need to be able to encourage practices, companies, individual leaders who are really doing action in this domain. We as a media product will be a catalyst in sharing their stories so that more and more organizations can adopt those best practices. So I would like to, at this point, bring in Vasudha back into the conversation so that the first session can be started. And I wish all of you a day of learnings, a day of taking away inspiration and making it an action plan. And when we meet here next year, we've accomplished much more than we accomplished in the last few years. So back to you, Vasudha, and all the best.
Thank you, Dr. Batra. And you're absolutely right. Climate change is not just a business strategy. It is a reality. It is a reality for all of us. But without further ado, I would like to now start our day's panel discussions. The first discussion we have for you is the climate crisis, need for global and bold action. Our speakers include Mr. Chaitanya, Kalia, Climate Change and Sustainability Services Leader, EY India. Sharang Ambadkar, a Managing Director, Feel Good Econiture LLP, and Saurabh Gupta, founder and CEO of Earth 5R. And moderating this panel will be Mr. Sameer Joshi, Honorable Treasurer, Governing Council, Indian Plastics Institute, acclaimed polymer technologist, and expert in plastic recycling. However, before we begin, we would like to play a short video for you. I request BW Businessworld to play that now.
Some call me nature. Others call me Mother Nature. I've been here for over 4.5 billion years, 22,500 times longer than you. I don't really need people, but people need me. Yes, your future depends on me. When I thrive, you thrive. When I falter, you falter. Or worse. But I've been here for eons. I have fed species greater than you, and I have starved species greater than you. My oceans, my soil, my flowing streams, my forests, they all can take you or leave you. How you choose to live each day, whether you regard or disregard me, doesn't really matter to me. One way or the other. Your actions will determine your fate, not mine. I am nature. I will go on. I am prepared to evolve. Are you?
Thank you. Thank you, team BW, for having us. And, this film, it talks a lot. Earth does not need us. We need Earth. We need nature. We have a mindset of, carrying those placards and saying, save environment. But in the pandemic, we have learned that the environment took care of herself. It evolved, it evolved, it evolved. We were the ones who suffered. So let us stop that wrong notion of saving environment. Let us save ourselves, and our actions will save us. Environment is here. Earth is here to save herself. One of the crises is pollution. We have to make peace with nature, and there is a role for everyone. We have a planetary emergency. It's not just that we remember our environment and pray and do things on this World Environment Day. By transforming how we look at the issue, we recognize its true value. And by reflecting this value in policies, plans, and actions, we have to restore our nature. So we have to remember it is we who have to act. Joining me on this illustrious panel is Chaitanya and Sharang, who are leaders in their domains. Our third speaker, Saurabh, could not join us. So without taking much time, I would request Sharang, who is a young startup who is doing work in the field of plastic waste management, and very enterprising young IT engineer by profession, but environmentalist in heart and action, to please share his views. And Sharang, may I request to unmute yourself, show your presentation, and take 10 to 12 minutes.
Thank you very much, sir, for that introduction. Thank you, BW, for inviting us on this panel on sharing our views on this Environment Day. My best wishes and good luck for changing how we are living in this environment, because we are the future of this, to change and grow this in this environment together. With your permission, sir, I would like to share my screen now to show just a short slide of what changes are happening. Is my screen visible, sir?
Yes.
So this is the recent environmental performance index, where India was rated 168th out of 180 nations, which is a very encouraging thing for us, that we can do a lot more going ahead. But being at such a low stage, we have to change and take bold actions towards changing of the environment and changing the behaviors that we are currently doing in our country. I think our country is a systematic chaos of how our behaviors and our daily routines is planned out. To start with, because I work in waste, this is the type of waste that we throw away. This is a packaging type waste that we throw away in our dustbins without knowing where it is going to go from our dustbins, from our homes. So this is where it goes. It goes into landfills, and it keeps on filling and builds mountains of waste that come into the front page of newspapers, which is very saddening to know that such habits that we incur in our daily routine are going to disturb and damage the environment. So the first thing that we need to do by starting at our home is the segregation of all types of waste, so nothing in the environment goes into such landfills which disturbs the environment. Because at the end of the day, as Mr. Samir Joshi's video said, nature does not need us, we need nature, and we don't have to destroy nature for our needs. Second is such type of plastic bottles or any type of plastics which is manufactured, only 14% of it is recovered till now on a global stage. In India, almost 60% of it is recycled, but on a global stage, only 14% of it is recovered, which is deeply saddening. So such habits of recovering the waste that has been generated or that has been manufactured needs to be recovered as soon as possible. Currently, we are living in such a system where we are taking from the raw material from the natural resources, making and manufacturing products out of it, and disposing it after our use. The disposing systems are also not the correct ways. It goes into landfills or incinerations, which is again depleting the environment, and the gases that emit from this disposal systems are creating a climatical crisis. It disturbs the ozone layer. It helps the outer UV light to come inside the environment and damage the living organism or the living things on the earth. So the money generated from the plastic waste, only in Mumbai, plastic waste generates almost 700 tons a day, out of which 2/3 is recovered, and the remaining 1/3 accounts to 234 tons per day. So even if we leverage an average cost of 10 rupees for 1 kg, that is almost 23 lakh rupees per day, which could be generated from waste. While fighting for the climate crisis, we could also generate some revenues. So this is how we should change for a better environment and for a better economical businesses to run in the country. In the oceans, we are dumping almost 8 million tons of plastics as dump. And it is said that by 2050, the plastics in the oceans will be greater than the fish in the oceans by weight. So these are some things that we should follow: reduce, reuse, and recycle. And moreover, 2 more R's to add to that is refuse and rethink of how we use the material that is coming into the environment. So you cannot solve the problem with the same mindset that has created it, which was said by Albert Einstein, and this is how we should follow it. This is the new plastic or the new economy that we should follow. Whenever a material comes or a raw material comes into economy, after the manufacturing process and it has been distributed into the generic users, we should not send it to landfills or to incinerate, but take it back to reuse it, to remanufacture it, to recycle it, or to biocycle it. Such things of by which we could repair the products or reuse the products or remanufacture the products that have come into the world and not sent to landfills is going to help us decrease the environmental crisis that our habits and the systematic chaos, what we have done, what we are going through, and what we are doing today and tomorrow. So behavioral change is what is needed to follow and to help, not to save environment, but to save ourselves in the coming future. Such solutions which we used to have earlier in the days, a take back model of the glass bottles, which currently have been replaced with plastic PET bottles, can be also a solution, so that no more plastic is generated, no more material is generated on a daily basis. So these are the three basic circular models which we can focus on as to change the way we do business and the way we act on a daily basis. Energy from renewable resources, which we are currently focusing on, and how our country has been aimed to produce 50 megawatts of power and through natural resources in the recent COP 26. These are some sources of renewable energy that could possibly be a solution. Some innovative things are coming into the renewable energy resource, so using solar light, wind power, and water power, hydro energy can become a source of generating power, and that is what we are looking for. The second is extending life business model. The first one is the take back model, where we don't have to pay for each and every material, but we just have to use it as a service. Like this chair can be replaced, or when it is broken or when it needs to be replaced, the company can take it back and give you new chair as a sustainable take back model. Leasing products as a service. So there was a recent announcement by Philips Lights that they are not going to sell their lights bulbs coming forward. They will be selling the light service as not a product but as a service, so that you will have to pay just for the lights and not for the products. And this is how eliminating waste can help us not send the material to the landfills and emit gases which emit from those materials when it stays in there. So reducing the waste from other industries as a resource are some of the examples that we should follow to maintain such circular businesses and circular economy in the coming world. So the change is avoidable, but we need to change the way we produce, the way we consume, and we need to change the way we live. At the end of the day, we are the future. So what exactly should we do? With this presentation, you must have come to know that these are some of the basic few steps that we need to do. But going ahead, there needs to be a lot of changes, and mainly a behavioral change that we should ourselves take it in our hands and make this a properly functioning environment, and the world will function the way we want. Thank you very much, sir. You're on mute, sir.
Thank you, Sharang. That was an excellent presentation. You belong to the generation of millennials, and you bring a fresh whiff of breeze and action and vision to this. Thank you so much. Experience counts a lot, and we have a person full of wisdom and experience, Chaitanya ji. Over to you, Chaitanya ji, for your opening remarks, and then we could take some questions.
Thank you, Samir Bhai, and greetings to you, the chair of the panel. Also, greetings to our young entrepreneur, Sharang ji. I mean, very interesting presentation. And also, I want to start thanking Businessworld for organizing this event on the World Environment Day. And welcome to all the people who have joined this session. Thank you so much for taking your time out and joining this session on a very, very important day. So what I have done is, Samir Bhai, I have prepared a little bit more on the topic of the session in line with climate crisis. I mean, of course, I completely believe, and my entire career is actually dedicated to this climate crisis part. What global actions are happening, at what bold action we can take. So what some of the things, just to give you a heads up, so then we move on to Q&A session, is global action keep happening. Now we need to decide that how it is converting to action on the ground, which are at essentially at two levels. One is at the technology transfer that is happening, and second is all this technology may cost money. So what kind of funding that is likely to happen? I think ultimately it boils down to these two parts. So what if you look at really at a global context, what is happening? So the recent event happened, we all know, in Davos. The climate change, the two things happened. All the government people, they meet in COP, which is Conference of Parties. Last happened in COP26, and most of the private sector, they meet in Davos in a couple of times a year. So one recently summertime happened, a few weeks back, in the end, towards the end of the May. So all these technologies, because of the lead time, several countries, including India, that's the reason I'm talking about it, and many private sector enterprises, they have said that we will advance purchase or book orders for this new technology. For example, if a Sharang has a interesting product and it's not being commercially viable, then some of these companies said, okay, we will take a long gestation period, maybe sign a contract for 30 years, so the payback is possible. So some of those commitment has happened, and therefore we see that, and my request to entrepreneur to watch this space, because a lot of technology transfer in the climate space is happening. So I would put that as a bracket of the bold actions. Second, as I said, we all know government of India has taken a very strong stand in terms of climate change now. And if you see that by 2070, we are going to be carbon neutral or net zero, that is what is our commitment. 2070 looks, for Samir by me and you, whether we'll be there or not, that should we all should be there, but little longish time. That's what I'm trying to say. But it is not, in real sense, it is not. To reverse what is happening, we have seen during the COVID days, the environment has really started kind of coming back to all the impact that has been made. So therefore we need time, and then it will reverse, and that's my faith. And therefore the government at the state level, at the panchayat level, they have started working. And that is also one area which is, again, I would categorize as important, and the bold action that government is taking. And therefore comes down to, if you look at the top government and top businesses are doing, followed by what governments are doing, comes to the individual, what all we should be doing to climate change. I think we must understand each one of that is, first of all, climate change is real. What does it mean is we have to work with our plan B in terms of what we need to do, how we can adapt to the climate change, how we can stay in a resilient society, so that if something happens, then how we can safeguard ourselves. So the areas about safety, areas about how to manage the extreme event like heat wave or cyclones, how we can live with that. I think that is at an individual level, at a society level, we have to work on. So I'll stop there and hand it over to you. But once again, thanks for inviting me for this interesting session.
To take it again from there, sir, global warming and climate change is a very huge problem that faces us. And what is the role of each stakeholder, like businesses, individuals, and governments? What should be their focus?
Yeah, I was kind of touching upon those points. Let me elaborate this a little more. In terms of the government, very clearly you will see, if you see the member nation of United Nations, there are many countries, including India, they have taken their net zero target. And there, at the same time, there are many countries who are specifically dependent on, still today, heavily on oil and gas, etc. They have not taken it. And therefore, those countries who have taken, they are making regulations, they are looking at, how incentivize or how to promote. I would not use the word incentivize, but how to promote. Although many countries, the incentivization is happening like for electric vehicle, etc. In India also, initially we did for wind and solar. So countries decide what to do. But that is the essentially role of the government, to provide clarity in terms of how this net zero or decarbonization will happen, come up with right kind of regulation. Samir bhai, you work in the area of plastic, which Sharang just touched upon, and new again draft regulation has come. So all these regulations, which are earlier when we were young, of Sharang, were about the factories. But you will see most of the regulations are not now so much on the factories, but in the public domain, whether it is related to EPR of plastic, or the construction waste, or the batteries, or everything that we talk about impacting people. So more and more regulations are from the government side are going to come in the area of public. Even the vehicles which will not be allowed to ply after a certain year of time, those kind of the public related regulation, not so much at the factory. Of course, it will impact everyone. So that is the kind of what I see increasingly role of the government is going to be there, provide direction, provide regulation, which will impact public. At the same time, support. We know the first level of climate change was adaptation, followed by the mitigation. So you have to adopt. But now people are talking about resilience, which means it is going to happen. So how we can create a society that event is happening, everything goes back to normal as early as possible, because we know it is going to happen. If suppose, for example, we switch off our light, or there is a load shedding, we have an arrangement, we switch on, a candle or something else. So the alternates are available quickly. So those kind of resilient kind of behavior at an individual level, I think we have to showcase more and more. You're on mute,
When you did mention about extended producers' responsibility, the new draft, I would just like to touch upon this. We are liable, we are mandated, and it is a moral responsibility to take back the plastic we have put in nature. So the extended producers responsibility guidelines which have come, they are among the best in the world and evolved, which mandates the producers to take back the plastic they put in terms of what they put in the market, and the targets are said, the guidelines have been given, and a web portal has been developed where all the stakeholders have to do their part. Basically, the producers have to register and mechanisms to take back the plastics. So this is evolving, and extended producers responsibility, I don't look it at that way. It is environmental protection responsibility that should be the larger cause and the mission. That's what I feel. Sharang, you have developed some product which we would like to hear about that, and how that product has been instrumental to bring a change in the line of environmental protection.
Thank you, sir. So what we are doing is we are basically into material development out of the material which cannot be recovered or which cannot be recycled, which it cannot be recycled. But we as a startup are finding ways to find solutions to so that we can protect the environment in our ways. So currently we are recycling multi-layered plastics. Plastics, something which can be seen like this, which has an outer layer of plastics or different layers of plastics, and the inner thin layer of aluminium. So this is what we are trying to recycle, such plastics which were not being picked up by the kabadiwalas or the rack pickers. So we are trying to generate a value from that type of waste. If I could show you exactly what we do, I hope you can see my screen. I'll just show you an infomercial of 1 minute or 50 seconds, which shows what we are doing.
300 million tons. That is the amount of plastic waste we humans generate in just 1 year. And yet, only 9% of this is ever recycled. We at Feel Good Econiture make waste feel good. And that is why our vision is to achieve a circular economy that is sustainable for all. Introducing our flagship product, Styles, the sustainable tiles. To make a style, we take ocean-bound multi-layered plastic waste which is granulated and then turned into a style. It is easily installable, fire-resistant, and can handle almost any load that you throw at it. Not only this, its recyclable nature means that a style can never go to waste. Numerous clients are already a part of our movement aligned with the Swachh Bharat mission, and we urge you to join in as well.
So yes, this is what we do, sir. So we are making tiles which are replacing the concrete blocks, which emit a lot of carbon dioxide while the production of concrete. So with such simple solutions, this is one of the solutions to replace in concrete in few areas. And the other is we are replacing wood by using the same material and building furniture out of it. So these are the two products that we are coming out right at the market, that we are selling it to businesses to help them give out a solution to following or in line with environmental protection. So this is what we are doing currently, sir.
Excellent. And I heard that recently, just a couple of days ago, the CEO of Niti Aayog, Shri Amitabh Kant, also appreciated your work.
Yes, sir. It was day before yesterday itself in Delhi when Mr. Amitabh Kant sir had appreciated the work that we are doing.
Excellent. Chaitanya ji, if I can come back to you, we talk here a lot on net zero. So what is actually net zero and India's commitment to net zero, and what will be the impact on businesses and people at large on this net zero?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question because we talk a lot, as you rightly said, everywhere in the newspaper, we talk about net zero. It's basically following the trajectory that the global temperature remains below 1.5 degrees centigrade. So, just to put some numbers behind it, there are about 35 gigatons of CO2 in the atmosphere. And we have to remain that. Today, we are exceeding 45 gigatons, depending on how the calculation is taken. You may see, how do we calculate? So again, it's such a vast thing. It is calculated through, all the scientists whose expertise are shared by the government. If you recall, after our Dr. R.K. Pachauri, who was heading the IPCC, who won the Nobel Prize, those are the institutions who calculate this and say, okay, this should be the temperature, or this should be the accumulation of greenhouse gases so that our temperature remains below 1.5 degree. And then this volume is divided into every country. It can be further today divided into every sector and companies also, depending on how much they are emitting. So therefore, when a country commits to net zero, that means they are saying my emission, absolute emission, which means whether we are increasing our GDP or whatever we are doing, it will be below 1.5 degrees centigrade, and whatever is the volume distributed to each of the country. Now India has taken the same stand, and by 2070 we are saying we are emitting more today, but we will take right kind of action so that it reaches that level. So that is the first at the country level. We have to do that, and I'm repeating myself. It has to be absolute emission. So it's not that we say per capita because our population is very high, so our per capita emissions are low. But that will not be the case. We have to reduce our absolute emission. Now this is, as we can imagine, is not going to be easy task, which means our GDP growth is increasing, productivity is increasing, everything is increasing, but at the same time we have to reduce emission. How it will happen? We have to decouple growth. So we keep growing, and decouple means we don't emit so much of CO2. Therefore, we have to introduce new technologies for fuel. We are talking about EV, for example, now, renewable energy, etc., etc. So what, while taking this 2070 stand, our Honorable Prime Minister, when he went to the Davos on the 2nd or 3rd day, I don't exactly recall, but one of those days, what they have done, they've taken what is called as Panchamrit, so because Panchamrit is a mix of 5 things. So similarly, our Honorable Prime Minister has taken this pledge globally and said that, okay, this is what 5 things we are going to do. And one of them was making commitment to net zero, but other things are like looking at, overall reduction in greenhouse gas emission by adding additional 400 gigawatts of renewable energy, reducing more and more greenhouse gas emission by doing more plantations. So certain area of plantation has to be increased. And similarly, I don't recall all of them together by heart, but 5 such activities has been committed by Government of India, and the ministry, which is Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change, they are today looking at it very, very closely. And also they are, taking action, which is getting into other states and then all to the business as well. So that's what is about net zero. In summary, doing activity, doing growth, but remaining within that 1.5 degrees centigrade scenario. That is what is all about net zero.
As a follow-up question, sir, what I would like to also understand from you, we are say, what has to be done in the future. So considering this and considering the way climate is changing, yesterday I was in Rajasthan, 46 degrees centigrade.
Correct.
And what has to be done, by us and other stakeholders? We keep on blaming each other for climate change, but it begins with me.
I know, absolutely. I completely agree. So there are 2 things. One is, or rather 3 things I will say. First one is, let us internalize. Once you internalize that this is real, we have the problem, I think, then we start looking at the solutions. So first of thing is, those days are gone to say that, no, climate change is not real, etc., etc. Like you said, the temperature or the extreme event, all of that we have seen never happened before. So we have to internalize that this is happening. Second, once we internalize, then we prepare for it. That is the word I'm using, is resilience, which means that probably now there has to be more doctors to be trained how to quickly, address the heat stroke. So doctors, if not doctors, then probably at the village level, at the primary care center level, where we today have such a strong, thanks to some of the activities done by our the medical fraternity during the COVID or otherwise, they need to be trained for some of these things. I'm just giving one after another example. Similarly, some other people, say for example architects, they have to now think through how we can create infrastructure, how we can create houses, how we can create those things which are now resilient to some of these cyclone or extreme event. Maybe we have to define our code in a different manner, how we are doing that. At the same time, we have to learn from our ancestor, village people, all of them. They know quite a lot. When tsunami, etc. happened, it impacted everyone, but not the Aborigine people of Andaman. They knew what is coming or what is happening, and India is full of such kind of knowledge. So while technologically we are advancing, at the same time, we have to protect, understand what is going to work with nature, because that's what we are going to face more and more. So multiple things can be done, but to summarize in a single point, I would say that please understand it's not going to go away. It is real, and we have to create a very highly resilient society. That's the way to go. And how we achieve that, with government at the individual level, with the conferences like this, we have to take multiple actions.
Thank you, sir. Same question to the young generation represented by Sharang. What, Sharang, do you feel does your and the upcoming new generation have to do for climate change?
Just like how Chaitanya sir said, that we have to start with ourselves. And the most simplest thing that I would suggest is by at least start to segregate your waste at home. These are some simple things that I would like to suggest. That is segregation of waste, and not and having a behavioral change of not emitting or doing such things which are going to emit a lot of different environmental damages in the world. But the most important thing is the segregation and awareness in your society or to your neighbors to do the same is what I could say.
For you're young and you have a dream also towards the environment, and what support you need from organizations and the people to create that change when you need some support, or do you need support?
I don't need support as from someone from one person, but I need support as a generation. Just like how Chaitanya sir said, in Davos, people or organizations have supported technologies and technology transfers. So I did not know about this, but an awareness that something like this is coming, and you could take advantage of such things, needs to be more elaborately made aware about things like this. And also, just like how tech startups, I would just tell or take 2 minutes that the tech startup was the last decade, and the coming decade is of environmental changes and environmental impact solutions. So how the tech startups were supported by companies by funding in a lot of economic support, it is time that such solutions or such economic help should be done to the climate changing action taking startups. And that is how the behavior and the actions will be changed by all the audience in the world.
Thank you, Sharang. Sir, a last question to you, Chaitanya ji. What and where should organizations on people focus on in this present system?
I think I know I'm mindful of time, so I will say I've already said about the people, so I'll restrict to the organization. Because when I relate to some of the things which Sharang is saying, in simple words, every organization, when they are making a business plan, the last decade was when they are making a business plan, they will put digital as a forefront. We can't think now working in an organization without email, without ERP system, without video call, conference call, etc. So it has become part of DNA of the organization using technology. I think the crisis is now, and therefore the requirement is now, but it will happen. I imagine it will happen slowly. But the expectation is all the businesses put the climate change related strategies, sustainability related strategies, circular economy related strategy. As Sharang said, it is going to save a lot of money. It's not only expenditure. So in summary, they have to have their growth plans, business plans, next decade, new products, whatever they are launching, everything has to be aligned with sustainability, climate change, etc., etc. That's the way to go. We all know without that, it is very, very likely that things would be very successful.
Thank you. So I have to thank my panelists, the youthful Sharang and the wise and the wonderful Chaitanya ji. And just to conclude in a sentence, by polluting our oceans, not mitigating our carbon dioxide emissions and destroying our biodiversity, we are creating problems for us. Let us face it, there is no planet B or there is no plan B. We are the first generation to feel the effect of climate change and the last generation who can do something about it. Believe in the power of your own voice, your voice, my voice, our voice. And when we say Swachh Bharat, that Swachh Bharat means such in our heart, Swachh in our mind and in action. Thank you for a great discussion. Thank you indeed. And back to the organizers.
Thank you, Mr. Joshi, and thank you, panelists, so much for that wonderful and insightful discussion. You're absolutely right. The Earth does not need us. We need Earth, and therefore, and India is full of so much knowledge, and we need to not just meet our commitments to the environment, but we need to exceed the commitments that we have made to the environment. So thank you so much for panel one for this discussion. Now it's time to move on to the next panel that we have planned for today. The topic of this panel is investment to impact. How clean tech can aid climate change mitigation. Moderating this panel will be Arjun Yadav, correspondent of BW Businessworld, and our speakers include Sanchita Jindal, former advisor of Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Shantanu Sonekar, co-founder and director, Strategy and Investment at Thai Green Innovations, Wilma Rodriguez, founder and CEO at Sahas Zero Waste, Smita Rakesh, Vice President and Partner at Social Alpha and Head of Climate and Sustainability, and Captain Satyendra Vedya, Founder Director of International Council on Solid Waste Management. Over to you, Arjun.
All right, thank you, Vasudha. Good afternoon, panelists. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I think we had some great discussion in the first panel and we've got some good points from that. Hopefully we'll touch upon them in our discussion as well. But the topic, that we are discussing today, impact to investment, how clean tech can aid climate change mitigation. So I think it's a really important topic that we are discussing because, December is a very busy month for media organizations. That's 1 month when we look at what took place in the year gone by and what will be the trends, that will shape the coming year. And one of the things that, that really caught my attention in December was Harvard University's geoengineering plan. And, that's clearly a different level of technology, different scale of technology, but, it gave us an indication that clean tech will be something to look on in the coming year. And that's what I want to ask you in your opening comments, that what are the trends that you are seeing in this clean tech space? And most importantly, how they are moving beyond the traditional sectors of solar and wind, because the primary clean tech revolution happened in these sectors. Smita ji, if you would like to start.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for having me here, and a very happy World Environment Day to everybody. I hope, and pray, and I'm sure we all do, that it doesn't become a tokenism and a one-day, exercise like many other such days become. Great question. And I think in terms of where we are at, and I will keep the opening remarks brief. I understand that, you circle back to me with more questions. Essentially, before I start, maybe I'll introduce Social Alpha, the organization that I represent. Social Alpha is an enabling platform. So we are a not-for-profit. We call ourselves a multi-stage innovation curation and investment and venture development platform. So the idea is that we support enterprises working on science and tech-based innovation in very early stages. We provide very patient seed capital, but also the other non-financial support in terms of overcoming their various valleys of death. And I lead the work in climate and sustainability at Social Alpha. So what are the trends? Yes, we are trying to go beyond solar and wind, and while large-scale renewables still will be about solar and wind, the decentralized renewable energy part, right, which has been something that's been looked at, but the kind of attention it's been getting in terms of the innovation space, and how startups and enterprises are engaging with it. That's one wonderful trend. The other trend that has been useful in climate tech is the kind of, it's a start, right? It's a sector that's just unfolding and starting, but the whole waste to value sector in the clean tech space, not just waste to energy, yes, waste to energy, the whole revival of the biogas that we are seeing in terms of new innovations coming up, both in the technology and in the business model and approaches, but also waste to value overall, right? And across waste streams. So that's been a big sort of a silver lining. That's what we're beginning to see. Like I said, there has been some push, some movement in terms of the deep tech, the battery storage tech, which is the bottleneck. We all have to understand clean tech sector will go as far as the bottlenecks would let them, right? And battery storage is a big bottleneck, and where, let's be honest, India in terms of its innovation is far behind some of the other countries. But the idea is to not just find a solution in the country, but also something that's globally acceptable. And we are seeing some amazing battery chemistries, innovation in very new battery chemistries come in, both flow batteries as well as solid state batteries for mobility, for stationary applications, large scale as well as decentralized, but they're all in very early stages. So while, to answer your question, there are a lot of positive trends coming in, there are still challenges. And I won't say those trends will lead to anything or create much of a dent unless we fixed in the entire ecosystem in terms of financing being available at various stages and of various types. Not just grant funding at some time and then VC funding at a later stage, what happens in between. And then also, other enabling systems, for example, R&D labs, proper testing facilities, opportunity to be able to do, pilots and, so on and so forth. And maybe I'll dig deeper later, but good trends need a lot of ecosystem support to move forward.
Thank you, Smitaji. Sanchita, I'd like to come to you. What are the trends that you are seeing in this space?
There is some phone call. Thank you so much for having me here, and congratulations to everyone here for this auspicious day of 50th day of World Environment Day. And in 1972 we had launched this day, and congratulations to Businessworld, BW Business also for doing this webinar on such an important topic of climate change, and which recently the Stockholm meeting summit has finished on this Friday only. And I had seen the recommendations, and I was among so many that the health of the people should be primary and prosperity should be the primary of the health, earth health. But what I was a little disappointed is nowhere it is mentioned that they mention the prosperity, but nowhere it is mentioned that use with care or reduce the waste or consumption reduction and all those things. And we all know that the world is grappling with the waste, the kind of waste we are generating. And with the manifold of increase in the population everywhere, the waste is going to be manifolds everywhere. And so going beyond the wind and solar. There are so many sectors, as just now Smita told that about the EV, but EV sector is there, that biofuels in energy, the main focus is on coming out of the fossil fuels. The biofuels is also an upcoming side where in fact, the government has also modified some of the EIA rules for giving them a priority for. So there are quite a number of technologies which are coming in this sector. Biofuels is one, EV, then hydrogen, the green hydrogen, which probably Professor Yadav would be speaking in the next panel or something. But green hydrogen is a big area where the new technology is, this is the upcoming technology, and we can have a little, what do you call, how do I define, like it is, we can have a little go away from the fossil fuels. Likewise, there are, like just now, the electrical, even the air, like Airbus has now recently announced that they will be having zero emission planes by 2035. That they means they will be shifting towards the EV sector. So, but the main problem, what I see is we are going ahead with so many things, but the life cycle analysis, basically, which we keep talking about, the circular economy and so many things, but we are not doing the life cycle analysis. Like EV, we are talking so much, but there are so many batteries, new batteries are coming, but we all know we do not have for the present the recycling technologies. So therefore, we need to concentrate more on life cycle analysis and ultimately what is good for the decarbonization, not that we are throwing the baby along with the water. So that is the main my concern. Secondly, hydrogen also has its own bottlenecks, and we need to, what do you call, the government is also giving a push towards that, and it can be biofuels is a good sector, and quite a number of other technologies, like when you're talking going away from the winds and solar. Even in the hydropower is a big area, but now the focus should be on the more towards the micro and mini hydropowers, and there are now the turbines, micro turbines have been invented, and the rotary turbines and all these. So these will help in creating power and going away from the fuels. So basically, these are the few of the trends which I see in the environment sector, and this thing would be we should focus more and more on the recycling technology. And the first panel also gave a little bit about the recycling technology, and we need to, so much plastic is being generated in our country, and then quite a good work is also going on, but recycling should be the main focus. Recycling, reuse, refuse, reduce, all these things should be the main focus for mitigating the environment, mitigating the climate change effects.
Right.
So for this, thank you.
Yeah, Shantanu, you are clearly in this space. What are the trends that you are seeing?
Arjun, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you, BW World, for the opportunity. Happy Environment Day to all. So Pi Green basically is into capturing particulate matter emissions at source. We've developed a patented filterless technology which addresses the issue of particulate matter emissions. We've seen what happens in Delhi, Delhi being the poster child during, like you mentioned, the winter months. That's when it comes to light, obviously. So we are looking to capture particulate matter emissions at source, be it diesel gensets, heavy vehicles, industrial boilers. One major pollutant, basically very typical to urban cities like Pune, Mumbai, or Delhi, Bangalore, that's come up during the pandemic, unfortunately, is pollution from crematorium burning. There were many PILs filed in various high courts. That is one problem. Obviously, we are also looking to reduce. What we've done is we've developed a technology which looks to do away with conventional solutions like filters, water. You can't be using water, basically a wet scrubber. You can't be using water to curb or rather to purify air. So we have tried to do away with conventional solutions, developed a technology, developed it in India, and we're using it to address problems of emissions at source. So basically, the big gas guzzlers and the big wood guzzlers, I would say, the big polluters like industries is what we are trying to do.
Thank you so much, Antoine. Hopefully we'll touch the pollution aspect later in our discussion as well. But Vilmaji, I want to know from you that you've listened to the trends and we're talking about the impact that these innovations are making. Can you elaborate on the impact that these innovations are making in climate change mitigation and carrying forward from the first discussion that we had? One of the important points was that yes, mitigation is there, but we have to make our societies resilient as well. And adaptation is something that's not really focused on because we are skewed towards mitigation. So your views on this?
Yeah, thanks everyone, and happy to be here celebrating together Environment Day. So Sahas Zero Waste is an organization that works with waste. So I could, when we say working with waste, we are looking to plug into solutions around zero waste systems, because ultimately we need to look at how nature gives us so much of goodies and so much of abundance in terms of what we use on an everyday basis, and we need to give back. Now, around waste, and these are conversations that we are having as a sector, those of us who work with, with circular economy systems, we are actually putting great caution on the word tech. Okay, because tech becomes this magic word that makes waste disappear, that kind of does not put enough of focus on industry, doesn't put enough of focus on behavioral change, because we believe that tech will solve all our issues. So therefore it is so important, and the trend today is and I'm speaking to an industry body here, so I would like to be upfront and say that the trend is greenwashing. And this is something that we need to move away, because when you're looking at solutions for waste today, waste circular economy solutions, even recycling is, should be taking a back step. The actual thrust should be on reuse, and I think Mr. Jindal said that very well. Refilling, reuse, repair. This is the thrust of the new economy. So today we are trying to live in a world where we believe that net zero again will be our solution and we have to increase our GDP. But if we have to go for growth, then let us look at an industry that revolves around repair, reduce, refilling, because if we have a commitment to climate mitigation and to in the environment and nature, then this is the steps that we have to take. Now, when you come to waste, the technologies that we really should be going after. In recycling, we should be looking at closed loop systems. Whatever plastic we generate, whether it is this PET bottle, let's look at design so that there are just one type of plastic in that bottle and not 3 or 4 as we currently have. And let's bring in the technologies which is currently happening to an extent to make sure that bottle comes back as a bottle and comes back into a food grade kind of plastic, so that it will, it will reduce the consumption of virgin materials. When we look at composting and when we look at trends and technologies around management of organic waste, again, there is this whole trend towards a 24-hour composting system, because that seems to be easy. That seems to be, what you can easily do. You don't have to have, you can have this huge tech park with thousands of acres of space, but you don't have space for composting. So you kind of look at technology to crunch the time for composting, which is normally 30 days to 24 hours. And we know that that is not possible. So our technologies in our choice should be a plug-in for tech, working along with nature and people, because nature, people, and technology together will bring us the solutions and not tech alone.
Right. Thank you so much. Captain Satyendraji, your views on this, how these technologies are creating an impact?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the founder director of the Council for Solid Waste Management, which actually aims at an integrated approach to waste management. Now, normally when someone says about clean tech, it's always about energy, whether it's batteries or solar power or wind power, etc. But there is a lot of climate tech coming in the form of micromobility, in the form of low greenhouse gases for heavy duty mobility, be it at sea, because our shipping consumes a lot of fossil fuels. There is tech coming in that region. There is a lot of tech coming in the food, agricultural, and land use technology. Because if you see that as per a PwC report, almost 74% of the food, that is the edible food, is wasted. And that is happening because of poor packaging, poor logistics chain. Add to it what Mrs. Roderick said about the plastic packaging, the single-use packaging, or what Mrs. Jindal said about the small-scale packaging. So we need to develop tech in that field, because that is where I believe a lot of waste is being generated, which is contributing to climate change, because we are not able to handle that waste that is generated. In other areas, what I understand, a lot of development is going on in in climate tech is about methods for capturing greenhouse gases, which Shantanu said. He was talking about particulate matter, but there are others who are trying to sequester CO2, etc. And of course, recording and analysis of climate and earth data. What I would like to focus on being into the waste management sector is that we need more technology, like Mr. Roderick said, in the manufacturing of products, packaging, which are reusable. Let's not go the recycling way so just yet. Let us try to reuse these products. And that is where we have to have systems like deposit return systems. We have to have some kind of a technology to assist in segregation of waste at source. If the product packaging is made suitable for an individual to segregate at source, it will be that much more easier, because we're looking at a behavioral change out here. I would also like to caution one thing about this, a lot of talk about green tech in terms of solar panels and windmills and all that. But we need to start looking at what we are going to do with these things 30 years down the line, because then we are going to have a humongous task of, sorting out these panels which have already been used.
Right. Thank you, Captain Satyendraji. Smitaji, I would like to come back to you. You mentioned about elaborating on the funding aspect as well in your first answer, and Vilmaji, shed light on what's greenwashing. How's the venture capital flow into the sector, and given how, ESG has been on the rise in the recent years, are investors going through what they call as green fatigue? What's the scenario like in the sector?
Fatigue would be ironical to call it, because it's a sector which has just taken off, right?
Yeah.
And it's at such super early stages, and honestly, nobody is looking at. None of the VCs are looking at early stage innovation, right? So what they're looking at are established, de-risked innovation. And that is basically, what has been happening for 20 years, whether it's in renewables and mostly in renewables, right? In the name of, climate, and some aspects of offsetting around either deforestation or renewables. That's the kind of funding that's happened, right? Where is the tech part of it? Where is the early stage tech part of it? And where is the funding appetite for it? Now, we are talking of a sector that's not just trying to create impact, it's trying to retrospectively create impact. Let's understand, when we say net zero, we are saying mitigate. And I'm glad you asked somebody this question, and I want to touch upon that. We are trying to mitigate what we are emitting, because clearly our ways of living are not sustainable. Second, we are trying to adapt, because what we've done in the past is trying to, is already causing trouble. So we're trying to adapt to what's already happening. And third, we have to retrospectively correct ourselves. So we have to capture the amount of carbon we've emitted in the past, not just reduce our emissions right now. And all of that makes this whole space super complex. We have to, run on say an escalator that's running backwards, right? That is the kind of motion, and there's no VC funding. Honestly, there's some R&D funding in early stages, but otherwise where most of the tech is. A recent International Energy Agency report, and this is just energy tech, like Sir said, clean tech is much bigger and energy still gets more attention, said that around more than 50% of technologies that have the potential to solve the world's problem and work towards net zero are in nascent stages, not reach the market, but in very early stages, right? So VC funds are not even looking at it. They're looking at ones that have become commercial, that now are no more impact in the impact space. They're basically at a scale where they're making business sense, right? Forget VC fund. Where are the other sort of funds, right? Whether it's in debt or equity or grant money, there's a dearth of capital for this space, because we're talking about something that will yield, one, it's high risk. Second, most of the technologies are deep tech. And third, we're talking about something that you can only measure impact of potentially. There's nothing to demonstrate, and it's not straightforward. The theory of change, so to say, is not to say, even typical impact investors would shy away, because it doesn't say, okay, 50 people benefited out of this, right? The scale is humongous, but also so is the complexity of the problem. And therefore, the space doesn't have funding, absolute dearth of funding in terms of quantum, scarcity of funding in terms of distribution. Like Sir rightly said, some sectors get more funding. If you break it down, even in those sectors, it's the platforms that get funding, not deep tech, right? So in EV, the platforms get funding. Clean tech car, the entire cumulative figure, aggregate figure goes up because of what Ola raises, right? Not because of what the face of mobility is or the innovation in mobility is looking like, and funding is not distributed. So there is dearth of funding, there is distribution gaps, but also the organizations that have raised funding, if you map their journeys, and because we work with startups, some of them end up raising money at different stages. They go through difficult cycles. It's not easy for them to raise money. So you end up taking whatever capital you're getting. Maybe you need working capital for debt for working capital. You end up raising equity and diluting yourself. These are not optimal scenarios for enterprises. We are not encouraging innovation. Then there is grant at some stages, and then there's nothing right after it, right? The appetite to take risks, the appetite for failure, the appetite to have bigger ambitions and goals is missing in the funding world altogether, not just VC, but all over, particularly with respect to the climate space. And that is what is the biggest bottleneck right now, to be honest. But just having said that, like I said, tech for adaptation, tech for mitigation, and like you were rightly saying, and carbon capture, of course. But adaptation tech, again, has to be looked at very seriously, because we're talking about a country that wants to go green and needs to go green. At the same time, also make sure that everybody has access to energy, right? So how do we make sure we're doing? So our problem is far more complex. We have to make sure everybody has access to all these infrastructure that we're talking about, whether it's energy or whether it's waste solution, sanitation, basic drinking water. At the same time, it's affordable. At the same time, it's being run through green means, whether it's energy or resource efficiency or the kind of materials we are using. So our situation is very complex, and funding, fatigue at the end of investors, honestly, is probably the last thing I would agree with. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Sanchita ji, before I get to elaborate the others on more on the technologies that they're working, your quick comments on them.
I'm not basically from a business point of view or something, but what I see a very little example, and I completely agree with what Smita just now told, that fatigue is not at all. This is the evolving field. How can there be a fatigue? But how much emphasis we are paying on the new tech or high tech or technology for environment, or this is very evident from that I have seen few episodes of that now, the Shark Tank or something, which is going in our TV. So now they are the investors which are taking for the startups, and hardly there is anybody in the climate change sector or in the recycling sector or maybe some new innovation sector. And most of them are either in the cookery or decoration or something. So I was wondering where, when we talk so much about the startups and solutions for the environment needed and solutions, but where are the people working for these? So probably we need to take care of both sides, like probably as Smita just now told, that the startups have to undergo too much in this sector. And that is why, although there are quite a number of new innovations happening in these startups, but still they are going through a tough time in this. So we need to ease that, and probably with easing down all these roadblocks, and probably we will have more of the capital coming into these. So I don't have much I'm not from a business side, but whatever little bit from my general this thing I can say is that we need to plug all those loopholes and roadblocks. Then only probably more of the venture capitalists and the other capitalists for the startups would also start coming into this sector.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Shantanu and Wilma and Captain Satyendraji, my next question is around the, if you could elaborate on the technologies that you people are working. As a Delhiite, as Shantanu said, air pollution is a annual affair, especially in the months of winters. But recently, even in May this year, the pollution was at a 3-year high. When we talk about waste management, we have 3 big landfill sites in Delhi. As a kid, I remember when I used to go from areas of Ghazipur and Balaswa, I used to ask my father that we have mountains in Delhi as well. But that's really a problem in Delhi as well. So Shantanu, first, I would like to start from you on the air pollution control technologies. If you could elaborate, and then we'll probably talk to Wilma and Captain Satyendraji on the waste management aspect.
Correct. So, in the words of Smita, we are in the business of mitigation or maybe repairing the damage that is being done right now. We are talking about EVs, we are talking about renewable energy, 500 gigawatt by 2030. But what about the 30 lakh diesel gensets that are being operated in India? What about the crores of vehicles, diesel vehicles that are applied on Indian roads, heavy vehicles, to be more specific? We are trying to address the lacks of industrial boilers using biomass or coal-based boilers. We are trying to address the problem at source. Our technology, like I mentioned, being filterless, looks or has the potential to address the problem. This problem where the density of emissions is very high when you compare it to the other sources of pollution. So the kind of particulate matter emissions that all these industrial applications do emit needs something that addresses the problem of conventional solutions like filters, back filters, which or for that matter wet scrubbers, which end up in a landfill or is directly emitted into rivers. So yes, along with technology for mitigation, what we are also looking to do is, in the words of Mrs. Rodrigues or Mr. Jindal, we are trying to also create zero waste. So what we basically do is we convert smoke into powder form, which is, you can touch and feel it. We try to dispose it off. We don't dispose it off. In fact, we try to look at forward uses of these. So few of the uses can be can be polymers, paints, inks. Someone in the earlier forum was talking about tiles, fibers out of soot or the particulate matter capture. So we are also looking to reuse this waste that we are generating instead of and rather avoiding it from ending up in landfills or rivers for that matter.
Right. Thank you, Shantanu. Wilma ji, if you could take Delhi as an example and the problem that Delhi faces, especially the areas around those landfill sites, the harmful environmental impact for the people living near those land sites. What's technically been wrong with our waste management practices, and what's the gap that the waste management industry is trying to look at to bridge this?
Yeah, so we would be happy as an organization to work in Delhi, but there are just too many barriers. And that's the reason why we are not quite in Delhi working, because if we were in Delhi, our approach would be that you should really not have these landfills. And the reason why you're having this space is because you are focused on a disposal kind of approach. The approach is collection, disposal, and obviously when you don't have the intervening points where again technology can play a role. Technology can play a role when you have segregated waste. For instance, segregation has now become mandatory, and many, even Delhi and other cities, are kind of enforcing it. But what happens to the segregated waste? The segregated waste needs to be properly kind of you have technologies like AI and blockchain to actually follow the waste till it goes to a processing center. And in a processing center, or you can call it a material recovery facility, you would have that level of sorting taking place, and you would make sure that each of that sorted fraction of waste, whether it is textile waste or whether it is different kinds of plastic or paper or metal, it would go to different recycling facilities. So that's how you would actually make sure that your waste does not end up in the landfill. And for this, very often now you do have the solid waste rules talking about bulk generators managing their own waste, and we service bulk generators, but our service, our approach or our business model is a revenue from waste and a revenue from a service fee. Now across Delhi, across even the elite communities of Delhi, you see a big pushback for people to even pay small quantities of money so that their waste doesn't go to a landfill but goes into a material recovery facility. Because all of us today are running professional businesses. I mean, we are a social enterprise. We are measuring our impact in terms of emissions and also the social impact. But we do need to have a professional setup, and we can't run systems informally. And that is how it was in the past, and that is how it continues now, but it cannot be like that in the future. So that shift in mindset is what we are missing in Delhi and in various states in the north, whereas in the south, we've made some progress. We've had policies really aligning with things happening on the ground. So I'm saying that people in Delhi, people in the North Indian states need to understand what they have to do, not just to kind of look towards the government and say, or the municipal corporation and say the municipal corporation is not doing its job. It is the people that have to first take the step, start with, easy kind of solutions that are there. And there are organizations like us to help you in that journey.
Right. Thank you so much.
Arjun, may I intervene first, because I'm from Delhi and I made a few of the rules. I can speak a little bit more on this. Basically, like all these landfills, we know that they have so much legacy waste there. So the government is now, the Delhi government has started working on the biomining of all these waste, and they are taking out the waste out of it. But basically, definitely that is not good enough, because today only there is an article in Hindustan Times about the Delhi scenario basically. So the waste is ever increasing. We had been seeing from 8 metric tons to now it has reached 11,000 tons. So and despite having 3 waste to energy plants, despite having CND waste recycling, we are still sending waste to landfills because our waste is increasing. And the main point, what just now Vilma told, is that we are not implementing segregation. We had, with so much research, we had included in the rules about the segregation, source segregation. And what in my every presentation or every lecture or everything, I keep vouching for: segregate, segregate, segregate. Segregation at source can really solve the problem to quite an extent, because then the recyclables will be sent to the recycling. So whether it's MRF or not MRF, whether it is something, but ultimately the point is that recyclables, wet waste should be put to the right logical end. And in this, basically what I think is a decentralized waste management, which we have included in the rules also, which is the key point, that unless the societies and the RWAs, they start managing their waste in a decentralized manner, the landfills will keep on increasing. So we need to focus on segregation and decentralized waste management treatment.
Right. Thank you so much, Sanchita ji. I just have 4 minutes left. My team is pinging me, Captain Satyendra ji. If you would like
I'll just give 2 or 3 points. One was what Ms. Smita was saying about the funding. I was reading a PwC report, and that report says that while more than 97% of the funding goes for mitigation methods, there is only 1% which is going into adaptation technology. So that has to increase substantially. Because new technology is going to take time, adaptation probably will be faster. Shantanu will be able to tell better. As regards to waste management, we need to have aiding solutions for segregation, both at source and at sorting centers. Maybe tagging of all plastic containers and all packaging material is a solution. There will be a huge pushback from the brand owners because besides being a cost, there will be accountability of what has come back and what has not. Because EPR also, like Mrs. Vilma said, there is a lot of greenwashing in the EPR is what I'm told by people who are involved in that business. So we need technology there so that proper accounting of the returned waste also happens in that section.
Thank you so much. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much for joining, and really hope that this sector, becomes that contributor in creating a sustainable future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Arjun, for having us here.
Thank you, Arjun. And thank you, panelists, for joining us for this discussion. There was a lot of amazing points made here. Definitely about we need to not just go green, but also make sure that this is accessible to everyone, easing down on roadblocks for startups in this space, and also recognizing social enterprises as a business setup. And for individuals sitting at home, segregation of waste is absolutely important. So once again, thank you for that great session. We're actually moving towards our final session for the day. And the topic for the session is charting the right way in a fight against climate emergency, COP27 and beyond. And joining us for this discussion is Madhulika Sharma, Chief Sustainability Officer at ITC Limited, Padma Shri Professor Dr. Ganpati B. Yadav, National Science Chair and Emeritus Professor of Eminence, Rachna Panda, Vice President and Country Group Head for Communications, Public Affairs, Sustainability and CSC, Bayer, South Asia, Pratap Raju, Founding Partner and Climate Collective, and Gaurav Gupta, Partner and Regional Director for Asia Dalbert. And moderating this session will be Sudhir Mishra, Founder and Managing Partner, Trust Legal. Over to you, Mr. Mishra. See that Mr. Mishra has not yet joined us, but we have our panelists here. So I would like to welcome our panelists. I hope you all had a good time and you were able to enjoy the discussion we had right before this. While we wait for the rest of the people to join, I would like to ask you, did you have a chance to actually hear what some of our old panelists said, and do you have any comments about that? Mr. Gupta or Ms. Sharma? Ms. Sharma, please.
Sorry, I didn't quite hear too much to make any comments.
We talked a lot. There was a lot of discussion about landfills in Delhi and how it's being treated, and also about segregation of waste. And that's definitely a project that we've seen taken up in the South a lot. But it's not really taking up the way it has in, at least not in Delhi. I mean, definitely societies are encouraged to segregate it, but I don't see it a lot happening inside the homes itself. So what has your experience been with this? Or, in general, any kind of climate reform action?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell from ITC's perspective, because post-consumer waste is one of our EPR responsibility. And I think most of the waste can be actually recycled or can be reused, provided, it is most of the non-wet kind of, or the dry waste which is there. I think the issue in India is the source segregation, and at the heart of it is the education that, as a mass, we need to spread that it needs to be segregated. Otherwise, it becomes very, very difficult to, dispose it. And most of it then goes into landfill. And then, it cannot truly be either recycled or reused. And I'll just like to mention a very good program that ITC supports in Pune, which is, I think, whatever I have seen, all the waste collection segregation programs across municipal corporations, I will probably star rate it as the highest 5-star rating. And it's done by an NGO called Swatch, and it's a very most inclusive program that I've seen, where they have included the cleaning people, and they have not kind of marginalized it, and it is still door-to-door collection. And since there's a human bonding, they can also, in case someone is not doing a proper waste segregation, they also go and tell that, you should be doing it like this. So the education also happens hand in hand. And I've seen that, apart from waste, they are now even getting part of the things like biomass maintenance of large eateries, etc., who make use of their services. So I think most of it can be done. One is that, but you have to think through the whole model. I think at the crux of it is segregation, and we need large scale education for everyone in terms of segregation.
Absolutely. Education and awareness is at the core of any kind of system to kind of build on it. I see Mr. Mishra has joined. I would like to pass the mic to you now. Thank you so much.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm sorry, there was some connectivity issue. And I'm really grateful that on World Environment Day, we all are together on a Sunday, sparing time. For last 22 years, I have been representing NGOs, government, state government, central government, pollution control boards, the corporates in the courts. And sustainability and climate change were a later word. Biodiversity, forest, wildlife is something I have been doing since 1998. There was a time when you will talk about environment and climate change, and people will react that this is an alien thing, what they have to do. And I will have a very free-flowing discussion because everybody here is a very eminent personality in their own right. They have worked a lot. Gaurav has given amazing suggestions. But let me just tell you first what I have done till now. So the biggest air pollution matter is in my name, Delhi High Court, which is called Sudhir Mishra Union of India. I'm fighting it since 2015 with my own resources, with my own money. And there is no agenda behind it. The agenda is that I want clean lungs. And I persuaded Medical Council of India earlier, and then the doctors fraternity, that you start writing that air pollution is one of the killers. And one of the killers and the reason for the kind of cancer and other stuff which is happening in that national capital region. So my own experience of representing everybody in the courts, whether on plastics, whether on waste disposal, whether on demarcation of national park and wildlife sanctuaries, also the successes which we have seen in last 75 years in this country. People don't talk about it. I think we had a forest cover of close to 10%. Now we have around 17%. Project Tiger is a huge success. There is hardly any country where you have saved the tiger the way we have saved it. We have good success with regard to conserving our flora and fauna. I think the species have been conserved and protected to a large extent. And I remember that in 2005, I had gone to a Fulbright scholarship to America under International Visitors Leadership Program. And at that point in time, I was told that we are one of the countries who have a permanent forest bench in the Supreme Court on every Friday. I was thinking only we, others also would be had. But only we had, and unfortunately, it's not functioning very regularly nowadays. But now we have National Green Tribunal and other platforms where we do this. My idea is to ask you what is your story, because so far as I'm concerned, I'm simply not understanding that what are the initiatives we are talking about. If you see, if you go to the hotels, the plastics are still being used. If you go to any kind of event, small sachet and the single-use plastic is still there. These are the challenges. The rivers are not cleaned. You can see so many videos coming on every social media that whether it's the Ganga or the Yamuna, you will keep on getting those videos. So there we are, our performance is very dismal. So one of the suggestions was to start with your experience and your story. So Madhulika ji, what do you think, what a company like ITC, which takes pride in sustainability, what do you think is your story in last 5-7 years and developing a story, how you see climate challenge as a big opportunity?
Thanks, Mishra ji. So for ITC, I think even before the word either sustainability or ESG or climate, I think became much more in vogue. There has been a triple bottom line focus, right from, I think it's almost 2 decades now. And
yes.
I mean, when we say triple bottom line, it's not only about profit, but planet and also people. So there are what I think I would, and I just discussed one of the most inclusive models of waste disposal, municipal solid waste disposal in Pune, which ITC kind of partners with. But I think for us, climate change, of course, we have footprints in our within our operations, which we have targets, very specific targets, and we are well on the track. The largest being, of course, switching into renewable energy, and ITC we have as a company, we have a target of being there, 50% of our energy should be from renewable sources, and we are already, and that's by 2030, we are already, this year, we would be about 42% of our share of renewable energy. And these are assets which ITC has put on its own. I mean, the other is, of course, trying to see that there's other form of energy that we use, the grid electricity, and that too by 2030 we want to phase it out and switch to other forms of renewable energy like biomass, etc. Again, we are fairly on the track. So apart from it, I think these are the things which any company would be doing, right? But apart from it, what I really want to bring to front is that when I talked about the triple bottom line thing, is that ITC actually for last 3 or 4 decades has been putting in green cover, as and these are all renewable sources, because if you look at our value chain, most of our products, except the hotels business, all our product line, they have the at the back end, if you go back to the end of the value chain upstream, then it is some form of the agri products, right? So this consciousness of ensuring that not only your the supply of raw material, but the people who are involved in actually creating that raw material. So the end user farmer, they are actually the beneficiaries of all the programs that we run. So one is the social farm forestry project that we do as part of our papers and division, where apart from which not only multiplies their income, which but also helps them to create a sustainable, helps the planet, because you are sequestering carbon naturally. The other that we do as part of the our farmer engagement is the water harvesting or the water projects that we have been taking up. Not because we have a significant water footprint, but we felt that water scarcity is something that will start impacting the farmers and hence the the whole value chain. And that is how ITC till date has created a lot of water harvesting projects, and we have a very specific plan till 2030. So as on date, actually the CO2 that gets sequestered because of farm forestry projects that we have undertaken with the help of our farmers, it is almost 2 times CO2 sequestered than the actual CO2 emissions from our own operations. And for water, about 4 times of water is getting harvested as compared to our own water usage. So that's a kind of program, and we have further ambitions to scale it up. So I would rather leave it at that, and probably going forward we can
sure. I'll come to Padam Shri Ganpati Dada Saheb Yadav ji, and you are somebody who is looked up for your pioneer work from the scientific perspective. Ganpati sir, what do you think about the few challenges? The world has a climate challenge, but what are the immediate climate change challenges India faces? And what you think our current government is doing, what the civil society is doing?
It's a very good question. India faces a huge challenge because our energy needs are increasing and we are polluting environment. And the problem is because of the carbon-based economy. And we have to be in the context of the entire world. This about 100 million barrels of crude oil is processed now, and the carbon dioxide emissions in the atmosphere have reached to the level of 420.7 ppm, which was just 410 ppm 2 years ago. And that means we have a huge challenge of containing the temperature rise, and we want to have it less than 1.5 degrees C as per the Paris Agreement. So that's a huge problem. And see, unfortunately, our farming sector is not understanding this. If you stay in and around Delhi, there are huge, burning of, stubble and all, and you can't land in Delhi during December, January. So they must convert all this, agri-waste into fuels and chemicals. Secondly, government announced on February 17 the so-called green hydrogen and green ammonia policy. And by 2030, we would like to have 50% of energy sources coming from these. So in other words, what it means, and interestingly, 40 gigatons of carbon dioxide was emitted in 2021 by the entire world. And we have to bring this down to 10 gigatons by the year 2050. Then only it is possible to have across the world 1.5 degrees C temperature rise. So it's a huge challenge. So what do? Green hydrogen as a policy should be adopted by Government of India. Green hydrogen is the best policy. So that means you split water, get 1 kg of hydrogen and 8 kg of oxygen. And this cost has to be less than $1, then only it becomes viable. Currently, whatever the gray hydrogen is produced by the refineries, where in refinery they use something like 8 different processes where hydrogen is required. Currently also they do it by steam reforming of natural gas. And that leads to carbon dioxide as a co-product that is also responsible for these emissions. So what it means to have a carbon neutral economy, even if you say biofuels, we have to have this contribution, brought down of the carbon economy. So that means, solar energy, wind energy, maybe some part of the nuclear energy, and then hydrogen. By 2050, we will have about 49,000 terawatt hour energy requirement, of which 73% will come from this so-called renewable energy. And in that, hydrogen will play a very important role. In fact, I've been proclaiming it all along that the new trinity for us, it is just like Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. It is solar, wind, and hydrogen. Solar and wind can give you energy, but hydrogen will give you products, materials. And that is where you will use hydrogen for hydrogenation of biomass and biomass derived chemicals and oxidation. So oxygen and hydrogen, they will be very important. And for so-called green ammonia, we will have hydrogen coming from this green hydrogen and nitrogen coming from air. So what it means ultimately, our feedstock will be air and water. Very interestingly. And on the top of it, the waste biomass. Farmers, just yesterday I addressed a farmers conference in Pune. And I told them, you do not expect much higher price your sugar cane, because that is not going to give you economics. Economics will be given only when you use that, so-called bagasse and other things. And right now what is happening, their biggest problem, that bagasse they use for cogeneration. And the government is not giving more than 4 rupees per unit. They used to get 6 rupees. So they are crying. I said, no, your solution is that you must convert everything, whatever you call waste, including all this, stubble, rice straw, wheat straw, the corn stover, everything into chemicals and fuels. But very interestingly, that if we want to have, say, 450 gigawatt energy, which Government of India plans, it requires $500 billion investment. So that means it has to be a totally different sort of, jobs and all that. Besides, in future, we will have recycle engineering. That is chemical, physical, and biological transformation of used materials, including batteries and whatnot, because they say we will require 3 years for our requirement. So
sure, sir. Sure, sir. We'll come back to you, because what you are saying is the Brahma Vishnu Mahesh thing. See, what we'll do, we'll make it more interactive. We'll come back to you. Let me ask, with your permission, let me ask Rachna ji. You are a communication giant. You understand communication, especially sustainability communication. I was looking at your profile. My biggest problem is that even small messages also are not going across. Like when we talk about these plastic bottles even in conferences, even now you'll find them. There are very few people who genuinely believe that the glass bottle with a lid can be given. But even if we do some soshabaji, there is no heart in it. That is one. You see the cars, you buy a car in Delhi, and I'm telling you about Delhi where I stay. People buy second-hand car and put plastic cover on their seats. And put it for 1 year, 1.5 years. That's the kind of society we live. What will we do with any kind of transition? We take pride in the fact, when I came to Delhi in 1989, Rachna ji, I was told, the first line which I was told was, हमारे शहर में 3 metro से ज़्यादा गाड़ियाँ हैं. ये एक social issue है. ये मेरे और गौरव के कहने से तो नहीं होगा ना सॉल्व, बिकॉज जब मैं टाइगर कंजर्वेशन पर काम कर रहा था 112 पिटिशंस मैंने लड़ी 22 साल. I have never seen the civil society really coming in one single matter anybody cared. The biggest problem here is you talk about air pollution. In Delhi, tell me how many people are even interested to do something about it? Or you want to cycle in Delhi, you will be just thrashed by the way Sunita Ranan was rammed by a truck. So where is the communication? What the government wants to do? What the corporates wants to do? Are we just doing a lip service?
Very interesting question, Sudhir. And I think I will bring in two perspectives here. One is, I think everybody has a role to play. It is each one of us, and corporates have a big role to play. I've seen, like Madhulika talked about it, a lot of corporates are working on it, and huge commitments which has to be well tracked, not just talked about it, but well tracked, measured, and in some way monitored. And I think the government also needs to start asking for that data. Like right now, there are policies which are moving in the EPR sector, right? They are talking about it. I think each one of us have to continue to do that. And I can talk about this, climate change is not just a global crisis. It is individually, it is in India, and it is in our own areas as well, right? Lot of RWAs, lot of communities, and I can talk about, I stay in Gurgaon. I've seen the awareness amongst the children, amongst the youngsters, etc. going when we were talking about this entire Aravali thing. Lot of communities actually came out and made some noise. And this is something which is building awareness. All our children, including yours, mine, and everybody's, are more aware than we were as kids. I think there is hope. I think definitely there is hope. On the second part, and I've heard a lot about, what we're talking about, water and farmers. I think, 80% of India's farmers are smallholders. And I'm going to bring that the Bharat perspective here. And climate change has a huge effect on them, huge impact. Per se, I think only agriculture employs 1 billion people globally to secure food supply, and this accounts for around 25% of global GHG emissions. Huge role. I think we are all talking about it. There is effort around modernization of agriculture, but companies like Bayer, companies like ITC, companies like, they are doing a lot. I wouldn't say that we're not. I think the private sector is doing. We need to collaborate a little more. I do agree that the communication part needs to go a little beyond. You're talking about Project Tiger, and that reminds me there's been a lot of action around from your end. But I think even at the awareness in the school level, college level was very high, particularly for that project. I remember, those days. So I think that a lot of effort is being made, but I guess there's still more. It's not enough amount.
Okay, so first round, I'll come to Gaurav now. Gaurav has been suggesting a few points to us, and see, I'm not pessimistic about it, and this is something which really fascinates me. That's why I talked about the positives of what we achieved in the last 75 years. I think the Prime Minister goes to Glasgow and he makes some really, really serious promises of 30% will be converted up to this year. Coal will get rid of in particular year. Gaurav, what do you think about India's commitment to COP? And also, I want you to tell us about the kind of challenges you see for the climate crisis which India faces.
Thanks, Sudhir, and lovely to hear from everybody else. Well, I think if the question is, what do we think about the commitments India is making at it? I mean, the COP essentially represents the commitments we're making internationally. I think India is in a funny place because it is trying to walk a fine line, right? It's trying to walk a fine line, number one, of saying, well, we represent the developing countries and we're the largest of this body, and we're trying to get justice. So, recognizing that the majority of the challenges that come from climate change are going to be experienced by developing countries, while the majority of the cause is not from them. India has often taken a very justice-related line, and the over 100 billion is needed each year just on adaptation alone, but everyone's focused on mitigation. But these countries will need that 100 billion will go to 200 billion by the time you get to 2030, 2040. So one thing is that India is trying to get everyone to pay their fair share. And as a result, it's playing a very tough game, right? It's actually in the negotiation game, it is the sticking point in nearly all negotiations. If you look at reports that come out, IPCC reports and so forth, India is always the one taking a hard line, and it's doing it because it wants to push this, I guess, justice plank. The problem with it is that that's important, and at the same time, India is a large country that should be forward tech leaning, thinking about 21st, 22nd century skills, and figuring out how climate is an opportunity, and the fact that just its internal domestic economy, greening it is going to make it much more competitive. Like, there is a very natural need to take forward-leaning leadership in this space, while at the same time saying, hey, we won't take forward-leaning leadership until we see justice. So this is a problem. This is a very big challenge that India faces on the international scale, because it's trying to deal with these two things that it hasn't necessarily squared the circle on, which is I want to hold back and have a leverage on these things. And at the same time, I need to show for my own good, or for all of our good, that actually we can lean forward on these things and make the most of it. So that's what I would say about the COPs. And I don't think we have a view, right? COP26 showed both leadership and showed recalcitrance to also move the agenda forward. Both things were present. In COP27 coming up, I think it would be great if we signal something. And certainly our personal view is that there is so much to be gained from leaning forward versus the focus only on environmental justice, which is real. There's absolutely no denial. But I think India can take a much more forward-leaning stance. Your second question, Sudhir, was about what do we think are the biggest challenges?
Yeah.
I think these are all well-known things. What I think many people, I'll mention two things because I think they're not fully understood.
Yes.
The whole fight on climate change is also an equity fight, because if you actually start to think about emissions from the perspective of distribution, we often talk about it in terms of averages, right? So the average, to hit the 2030 targets, you need to get to about 2.1 tons a person. The richest 1% are at 50x that. The bottom 40% of the world actually don't even hit 2.1 tons. Arguably, for their own development and well-being, they should be increasing their carbon emissions. Very strange thing to say. So once you actually take the distribution of the planet and the populations, and it's not just country-based. I think we often get caught up in it. It's actually the rich guy like me in Bombay and elsewhere, right? Like it's a richness issue. It's a rich versus poor issue. Then you see climate change as a very different habit formation problem. And so I think that's one perspective that I think I would put out there.
Okay.
I'll stop there. Go ahead.
Okay. So very interesting, Gaurav. I'll tell you that 2019, before the pandemic, when we all were traveling, I was in Korea, South Korea, for a conference, and in an environmental panel, one of the lawyers from China said that we are going to establish 1,700 thermal power stations. And I was absolutely like, I was just not able to even understand. I was almost thinking that what it will do to the planet. And there was nobody which is going to tell them not to do that. Okay. And that's, I'm talking about just 3 years back. Even in India, when this coal crisis happened just very recently, you know how much dilution we had to do overnight when the power was absolutely not available in most of the grid. I think the biggest problem which India faces today, you rightly used a word, it's an opportunity. Whatever shift we are doing towards going to electric vehicles, unless we do unless we actually borrow the same electricity from thermal power generation, it won't help us in the long-term perspective. But the kind of money which has been pushed in last 4 years, 3 to 4 years, and some of the transactions we are working on, the green funds and the kind of big boys have come into the clean fuel and other stuff. I think there is a ray of hope. But what I keep on saying, because see, going to a national park and a wildlife sanctuary, and that too not from a tourist perspective, going for assessment and seeing the pug marks and reporting back to the Supreme Court, those were the days when nobody cared actually. So I think if we can achieve that, we can also clean our rivers, clean our air, clean our plastics and other kind of mess, and then slowly we can start coming back. But the good part is, and I'll bring one more speaker has joined, Pratap has joined now, so I'll bring Pratap in picture, that the kind of interest which the corporates have shown in the clean energy, and with the kind of a statement which the government is making, like Delhi government said, we want the e-commerce companies in Delhi to completely shift to non-conventional energy. Pratap, what is the opportunity part of climate resilience in India? And how do you think that India has a optimizing, or I would say a very optimistic chance to showcase to the world that yes, we care for the climate?
Great. Hi. Thank you, everyone, and apologize for the delay in joining. This is a good question because when I work in the climate startup space, and this is a very new space in India, although not so new globally. But on the ground, it has absolutely exploded in terms of innovation, etc. Now, that's the supply side. How do you get startups? I was a solar developer before, and my insight as a developer was, when it's kind of obvious, when the price of power was above the grid, there wasn't much corporate interest. When the price of power was below the grid, there was a lot more. And this is the angle I believe is we need to think about when we think about innovation and unlocking these paths to sustainability. Is how do you make the pathways either lower cost or at least easier to adopt? When I talk to corporates, we run a lot of corporate deployment programs. For example, in Goa, we're running a alternatives to plastic reuse reverse logistics program for Taj Hotels currently, and we also currently running a energy startup program for discoms. And these are solutions to, especially the second one, to save discoms a ton of money, right? And this is where I think there's a marriage between what's happening in the startup space, which is where I'm active, and what we can do to make it easier for in particular corporates and governments to adapt sustainability and resilience. Now, when I talk to corporates, here's what I hear is, where are the solutions? I want to commit to paths. I want to commit to 1.5 degrees or I want to commit to net zero. There's a lot of interest, especially for many of our leading corporates. Their fear is failure. Their fear is, how do I do it? What if I don't have the tools, etc. And it comes from something that we all know, is that when you think about the corporate world and sustainability, in fact, they don't go in different directions. The data shows in the last 30 years that the more sustainable a company is, a listed company, the higher returns. And now it sounds kind of strange, because we're so used to thinking of climate from the CSR side or government side, but this aligns well with how corporates think, which is the bottom line. The challenge, of course, is a structural challenge, is building those deployment platforms. It's for corporates to develop their innovation teams or startup innovation teams, open innovation platforms. It's early stages in India. Oftentimes I see very large groups, top 10 Indian corporate, have a policy to go to net zero. When you go to the business unit, there is no connect, right? And then you see when there is connect that it's the head of R&D who's playing a double role with startups. Now startups, and that's hard to do as well, which means that people haven't figured out their incentive structures. They haven't figured out, if I'm in a corporate, how do I incentivize someone to believe this is positive for a career to join, let's say, the open innovation team at a corporate, or is it going to be viewed as a setback? These things will be worked out, of course. It will take time. But the positive thing from when I started was the fact that the corporates in particular are looking for this. They're trying to figure out what are these structures that will make it easier. And maybe I can just add one last thing is we've been running corporate challenges for a while. We are launching a corporate climate challenges.live platform to make it easier in terms of decarbonization, to work with many more Indian corporates, especially domestic corporates, to interact better with startups.
Wonderful, Pratap. Thanks a lot. And I'll come back to Madhulika ma'am again. And ma'am, I'll tell you one example that in 2006, 5 and 6, the one Gujars of Rajaji National Park, they were still not very convinced why they should leave the core area of Tiger Reserve. Actually, it's more known as the Elephant Reserve. Now it's also a Tiger Reserve. That why they should leave where they have been staying for hundreds of years and go out of it almost 70 kilometers where government wanted. So we got two examples from Karnataka, Bandipur National Park and others, and we flashed almost hundreds of pages of report, and then we did Jan Sabha and a public consultation with help of social scientists, which unfortunately we never used in our entire environment resilience fight. Whenever you see a pipeline not going through or a project not happening, the biggest fault line was that the social impact analysis was missing. And that is why the face-off between environment and infrastructure happened a lot. And that is what the voluminous court documents will tell you, because there is a complete disconnect. Another point is that I feel that the corporates need to tell their stories. Not in a routine manner with due respect, but in a more impactful manner. Because there is a lot happening, which Gaurav also said, Pratap also said, Rachna ma'am also said. What do you think should be the way forward to tell the stories?
Thanks. I think very good question. And I think Rachna ji also mentioned that there's a lot happening, but see, all of it cannot be done by individual corporates. And if you want to really move, significant portion and cover in next 20, 30 years, I think, and that's where the SDG, there's an SDG on partnerships, which actually comes into play, that we need to come together. Corporates need to come together, governments need to come together to actually move these stones and move these. And I think from an opportunity point of view, I really think India has got a lot of opportunity and can really leapfrog, technologies which the other Western companies may be grappling with, purely because of the, the last 5 years focus which has been there on the green energy, and really gives comfort to, I think, corporates. While I think Pratap mentioned or Gaurav mentioned that, corporates do have this fear of committing. I totally agree. Having worked for 30 years as a corporate, everyone has this, because, corporates are more often in the lens of a lot more, not only legal, but I think a lot more external stakeholder perspective they are taken to task. Even one LinkedIn post, you can be challenged, etc. So they are by nature, they would test it. They would really know that they have the exact steps to reach there before, before taking that kind of a call. And this, I'm talking from two perspectives. I have a steel lineage and I have, now an ITC consumer good lineage. Okay. So, but there's a lot of hope. And I think on storytelling, yes, things need to be, probably as corporates, we often, as I said, you do things mechanically because you are caught in standards, you're caught in a lot of these things which you have to do. And now, a lot of compliances that you have to do. You ask me, my team, I mean, including me, last 2 months, we are just bogged down with BRSR and all those things. Yeah. But yes, it needs to be told so that people can actually start seeing like the such story which I started when this panel had not started. I think as an individual, I didn't know before I actually went into and saw it, what it is doing in terms of how the outcomes have created impact for the, the sanitary workers who were there. They come on scooties and the pride they carry with their identity card. I think this is a story which needs to be replicated across municipal corporations in India. So definitely I take that as a sustainability professional. It's not only about meeting compliances, etc., but storytelling is an essential aspect, and I very clearly agree. But I would leave it that there's a lot of hope, and I am sure as a country we are going to achieve much more. Next 5 years would be years of action, right?
Yes, Madhulika ma'am, it's very inspiring because ITC will look up to for these initiatives. Rachna ma'am, I'll tell you a very interesting thing. OP Jindal University is perhaps the #1 private university. They asked me last year to do a analysis. They never called it a SDG goal or ESG report. They said, can you do a report? How much water we consume, how we interact with neighboring villages. And that's a 7-star university. And how much water is used in toilets, and how much food is wasted, and how do we relate to the lower employees, how much interaction is on health issues with the neighboring villages. We, with Terry, did a report, which when we did the report, we thought it's a report, nobody will look at it. 7 governors and 4 chief ministers have released that report in last 1 year, because they all want to know the story. What Gandhi used to say, that whatever that you live the action which you want to see. So I have started believing that you have to communicate more, and the kind of interest all of you were showing in this panel. My only handicap is that coming from a code background, I never want to process anything. I want to be totally unprocessed, no filters. So Rachna ma'am, what are your mantra for a better communication? Even I want to know, how do you communicate? And if we can showcase that, yeah, India cares for environment from all stakeholders, things will change.
Great, thanks, Sudhir. So let me give you an example of what we do at Bayer, a little about how we put the commitment strongly. So Bayer's commitment for 2030, clear mandate. If you go to the website, if it's spoken about in all different platforms, internally and externally, 30% reduction in our environmental impact, reducing greenhouse emissions. Between 2020 to 2030, we will be investing 500 million euros to improve energy efficiency in our plants. Sustainability targets are a part of the corporate strategy. The chief sustainability officer for the company globally is the CEO. So it comes out from there. It is not like, we have a separate team. We have definitely a sustainability council. In fact, we have one Indian, Dr. Ashok Gulati, who sits on the council, global council, speaks about it, what's happening in different parts of the world. So we have a council which advises the management about what's happening across the world, pushes the agenda. And most importantly is every country is given the target, saying this is it, and you have to commit to the target, process it, like we do it in the ESG reporting now. Every bit is monitored. And every year it is monitored, which is also I think communicated to the investors, which is where the stress or the pressure always remains. That I think the first point is has to come in from the top. Second is it has to be well defined, committed, and well monitored. Third is also right now, while I'm speaking, we are running a water campaign across the world. There is a lady, Meena Guli, who is an athlete. She's running 200 locations across the world, coming to India in early January to build on water awareness. We are trying to see how we will collaborate with other corporates, with the government, with the state governments at a different panchayat level to bring in awareness around water. And these are little things that corporates are doing and can do enhance much more.
Yes, thanks a lot. And the last word I'm giving to Gaurav Gupta ji, that you made very stellar points. Now, tell me your final thoughts that what you see from India's point of view, climate initiatives in next 3 years. And you think that presently we have got a momentum.
Well, I think the big challenge, and I guess we've talked a bit about corporates, is that we're going to have to do the most in terms of innovation around climate. And I think it's great Pratap is here because, you spoke about the fact that lots of good stuff is happening. Well, lots of bad stuff is happening too. Yeah. And India could go down the path of Russia. Like it could be, crony capitalism is not pro-environment. Okay. Yeah. So there's free money to be made from lots of natural resources, and crony capitalism doesn't listen to market signals. It listens to the free license of assets. So India is in a very precarious position because we at one stage talk about our startup and innovation sectors, which frankly need to still be unleashed. We talk about solar, but there's a lot of regulation on solar and who gets to do solar in the country. So I don't think this is about communication. I don't really think this is at all about awareness raising. I think this is, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll tell you, you have hit the nail. I'm advising a company which has come into a LNG space, and they have the same potential what a mobile phone had over the landline. And you talked about that who will do the solar business. Exactly the same dilemma we are facing, because the proviso of the law is so much against any expansion. If you have put capex on the pipelines, you can't do cryo or something which can be without capex and which has a different model altogether. So we have to get rid of all those barriers. You are right. Sorry, go ahead.
And so I think we know what needs to be done, but that doesn't mean we're doing what needs to be done. And I certainly think we need, it's not, we shouldn't expect corporates to do it. Corporates do whatever we tell them to do. Like, they're not moral beings, right? So if you're not going to put a price on carbon, or if you don't put a expected price, what are corporates reacting to? None of these guys were leading anything. Well, climate change has been around for 10, 20 years. Now they're realizing maybe they're going to get hit with a carbon tax in the future. Maybe their exports to certain countries are not going to happen if they don't clean up their supply chains. That's the only reason they're doing it, right? So we need to put that pressure. So the answers to that stuff doesn't sit with us in this room. It sits with finding a governance and political process in which we properly value the environment. There is no other answer. If tomorrow you don't put the right prices on things, we're going to keep screwing the earth. So I think that's where most of our effort should probably.
Thank you. So nicely put. And the last, since Pratap sir is back here, I'll give you the last 1 minute and tell us that what do you think about we should be optimistic about it?
Right. Thank you. I can only add from my angle, which is the innovation startup angle in particular, and it's only a small portion of the picture. As Gaurav was mentioning, on the policy side is extremely important. There's community awareness, social leaders, many things, but and innovation is only just one. I would say though that something is happening on the ground. There is this alignment of innovation and change that is profit driven. Now, Gaurav's right, profit driven could also be bad for the environment. But we have seen that a lot of the resource efficiency changes are positive for the environment by almost by definition. Less extraction, less usage of resources. So I think one thing that I would say that we should be positive about is we should continue to encourage this movement towards adoption of solutions, whether we can predict it fully or not, that's different. That's the nature of risk. But we should continue to push when one of the key stakeholders, in this case corporates, is asking for solutions, is trying to align, and maybe of course policy can support us on the maybe fallout from that. But I'm very positive that actually in the next 3 years we're going to see a lot more corporate action actually aligned to sustainability without as much government stick as we think we need. I think it's aligning much more slowly or much faster than we like.
Thank you, everybody. This was a wonderful interaction on a Sunday afternoon, and we think about 5th June as a festival or some sincerity. And I really feel when you show so much of interest, people like me get really inspired. And on behalf of Businessworld, I thank the entire panel today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Mishra, and thank you, panelists, so much. That was a really riveting conversation. And there are definitely a lot of barriers that we need to overcome as a society. But having conversations like this really helps us sort of understand what exactly those barriers are and what we as consumers can also do. And I think we definitely are looking towards a brighter future, especially since everyone is taking sustainability so much more seriously now than they have in the past. And with that, that was our final panel. I would like to come to the end of our today's discussions and event. I want to thank our speakers for taking out the valuable time to talk about the cause which should be #1 concern and priority for each and every human being. We urge our audience to take appropriate steps and initiatives to curtail the climate change and to do more to save our environment. And with this, I thank you all for being part of today's discussion. Stay safe and stay green.